joining us on the show.
Great to be with you guys.
Folks, on the line with me now, I need to turn on the text here so we can see as well. Vroop. There we go. We've got Dr. Tom Jones. Sawyer, can you do an intro for Tom Jones? Dr. Jones?
Sure, I can.
Go for it, man.
Sure, Dr. Tom Jones is a NASA astronaut. He has more than 1,200 hours in space over 4 different space shuttle missions, flying on 3 of the orbiters, if I'm correct, 2 times on Endeavour, 1 time on Atlantis, and 1 time on Space Shuttle Columbia. And also has 19 hours spacewalking, partly to install the U.S. Science Laboratory aboard the International Space Station. He also has more than 2,000 hours behind airplanes and has written a whole bunch of books, and 2 of them that you have to check out are Skywalking, which is his memoir about his time in space, as well as Hellhawks, which is a great story about time behind his airplanes as well.
I'm reading Hellhawks right now.
It's a coming on.
Great read. Thank you so much. So we've also got, I mean, kind of one of the things that I was doing with, Dr. Jones has more time in actual space.
Great intro, Sawyer. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Jones has more time in actual space with over 1,200 hours than I have hours in Kerbal Space Program in space. And you guys know how much I play this game, so that's an awful lot of hours. He's been in real life space more than I've played this video game, and I play this video game for a living. So, Dr. Jones, thank you so much again for making the time to stop by. We just did our final test of our Saturn V. We've got the upper stage of the Saturn V here. We've got the landing module, the lunar landing module. We've got the command service module. It's missing a piece. No spoilers, right? But we are ready to go for the actual launch. I think what I can do is actually just put this guy back down on the launch pad, and we will... Actually, let me give you a tour of it right quick, and we will show you kind of what we've been able to come up with. So we were trying for... In the game, it's not exactly a Saturn V, it's just kind of close to a Saturn V, right? But it's got the same kind of engine count in each stage, and each stage is kind of about the same visual size, and we kind of stage them off in the same sort of way. But again, it's not a simulation, we just wanted to get us kind of close enough. Let's see here. Did I miss anybody there? Oh no. I just got a pop-up over there. Yeah, I think we're good. Dr. Jones, are you still with us? I think we may have just had a bit of a drop there from Dr. Jones.
Yeah, unfortunately we did.
Yeah, that just popped over. All right. Well, we will give just 1 second here. Let's see what's going on. And he is dialing in remotely, so... Problem while we get the call back. Went poof. Yes, give us just 1 second here, guys. I should put up the tech. Have y'all seen my technical difficulties thing? Let me see here. Have you seen... Hank, you might like this. Where's my technical difficulties thing for a second? There you go. Poof! Technical difficulties, please stand by.
Now I have to wait for...
Now you have to wait 12 seconds.
Before I see it.
Okay, that says call dropped, but I can definitely call him right back and see if that's going to work. Alright, we're giving him a ring again. Let's just make sure.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Looks like I can recycle. I'm back on, guys.
Alright, it sounds like you've got a little bit of compression. We'll see if it's stabilized. But, yeah, stolen! Oh, everybody's calling me out for stealing this from KSP TV. Alright, can you hear us? Is everything kind of nominal here, Dr. Jones?
You're on a bit of a delay.
Bit of a delay there? Okay, so we're still in a little bit of a delay there.
That's faster.
Ah, excellent. Okay, so we do have a little bit of a delay there. Okay, so let's go back to our stream. Game KSP.
I just found a picture of Valentina Kerman, and she is freaking awesome.
She is.
Yes.
It's amazing that we have the female Kerbals coming up in 1.0. Dr. Jones, are you good on video? Can you see what we're doing from a video perspective and that sort of stuff? He is not currently in space, guys. This is just normal delay transmuting about the old Intertrons. But are you good on video?
I see a lot. Launch system Saturn V. That's perfect.
Okay, excellent. We do have quite a bit of compression there. Let's see. If you want, Dr. Jones, you might want to dump the stream quality down a little bit and take that on down to mobile or low, because it seems like you're a little bit bandwidth limited here. But I think we're good to go.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, it seems like you are a little bit limited on bandwidth. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. It's getting there.
All right. And I'll do a little bit of a tour here while we're kind of seeing if this stabilizes or not. Just feel free to interject. Go ahead.
I'm listening. Go ahead. I'm waiting for your tour.
Okay, good deal. So we're getting a little bit of compression there, but let's sally forth. Let's keep on going forward here. Let's see here. Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay there. We built the Saturn V, and we've got the main stage down here. There's 5 engines in the main stage. We've kind of done some homage to the kind of the way the design had little fairings, the flare out to the engines, the fins, and that sort of stuff. We've got another stage in here. Let me save this before that goes away completely. And we've got, on the second stage, we've got 5 engines in here. They're not all exact. They're not exactly correct. We've got 3 of our kind of bigger engines and 1 engine that has a little bit of a gimbal. I'm not actually sure if the engines on the second stage of the Saturn V had gimbaling or not. But in Kerbal Space Program, we do need to put that in there to help us continue going straight. We've got the upper stage, which consists of 1 larger engine and a fuel tank that is going to not only get us into orbit the rest of the way, but do the trans-lunar injection sort of deal. And then we've got the top of the stack here where we've got the lander right there on top of the 3rd stage, and the CSM on top of the lander, so that we can actually simulate the same sort of thing they did in all the Apollo missions, where the CSM would disconnect, turn around, and extract the lander off the top stage of the rocket. So that's kind of what we've built here. In our landers, I mean, it's got kind of a Princess Leia thing going on the side there with a little bun hairdo. It's not exactly a lander because we built it using the parts that we have in the game. We didn't have a lot of shiny foil and stuff, but it's close enough. It's there in spirit. And then at the top, we've got the CSM with its tanks, with some pay no mind to these little things sticking out the side here, and then we've actually got the launch escape system. In Kerbal Space Program, we could actually make a real launch escape system that would allow us to decouple the pod that the astronauts are sitting in, pull them clear of the rocket, and have them parachute down to safety if something went incorrect with the launch. It's something that we can do when we're playing the game. So let me put this back together and see what we can do.
Exactly how they built the shuttle you flew on, right?
Exactly.
Back together.
They just
put it together.
Just nuts and bolts and an erector set, guys.
They just kind of like slap it together and just like, whatever, that's close enough. We did have a fun time trying to make this thing launch correctly. There were a couple non-nominal launches.
They didn't have gimbal engines on the Saturn V.
They had which ones? Gimbals. Oh, they did. Okay.
Gimbals.
Excellent.
You have to be able to steer.
That's exactly right. We have to have them on our rocket and Kerbal Space Program as well, so we can steer. That makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. Sawyer, can you handle getting some questions out of chat and asking Dr. Jones while I kind of do the launch here?
Sure, I'll keep an eye on questions, but in the meantime, there was one we had earlier that we were discussing about how much shaking is there when you actually launch, and is there any way, was there compensation for it inside the shuttle so you could still read all of the monitors and screens and everything?
Active vibration damping going on, but the shaking was significant. It was rather like a roller coaster type of ride, swooping up and down. You were getting a steady acceleration, but a lot of shaking and vibration. You could still read the instrument panel, but you certainly felt the turbulence from the booster exhaust. And I've talked to Lovell and Hayes, who rode Apollo 13, and they got sort of a gentler ride because of the liquid engines in the first stage. They didn't have those crackling, rattling solid rocket motors that we had on the shuttle.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
That's cool.
The SRBs are a bit rougher ride, I guess, and since we weren't using SRBs back in the Apollo program, they got. I'd never thought of that. That's a great observation.
It's like you're
They told me that Bang and Bolt that we got at liftoff, they got a gentle surge. It was a slow buildup of thrust, and they said it was sort of, they called it the old man's Saturn V.
The old man's nice. This There's one of the mods in our game that's called Carbonite. What you can do in the game, you can kind of extend it, and people who want can program new parts and new things for it. But the trick with Carbonite is that there are some solid rocket boosters you can put on there, and they're very powerful and very cheap, but they're very unpredictable. They'll actually surge the thrust, kind of like you're saying. And I didn't know that that was kind of a realistic thing, that the SRBs are a little bit more surgy, a little bit less smooth than the liquid engine. So I have a whole new respect for the Carbonite SRBs that usually make your rocket shake apart and explode because they're so crazy. Let's see here. I am good to go for the launch.
A gentler ride, but they also got to 5 Gs during to orbit on the Saturn V, and never got above 3 on the shuttle.
5 Gs. That's. I actually want to see how many Gs we pull when we take off here, because the Saturn V, the lower stage, wasn't it notoriously like a little bit lighter on the thrust? Like it had almost not quite enough thrust?
The S4B, that's the third stage, single engine, and so they had quite a long ride, very gentle acceleration, just about 1 G, but it was the end of the first stage ride that got them up to about 5.
Ah, okay, excellent. So I didn't, on my engine, I've actually got a boatload of thrust in that upper stage, the third stage there, so I've got one thing a little bit backwards. That's good. We'll still get to space. I think we're ready to launch this thing. Should we go ahead and launch it?
Yeah, we should go ahead and launch
Go for it.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and throttle it up. I've got my panel locked so I can see the resources that I have. And you can see as I go through the overlays, I can see where my fuel is and that sort of stuff. My SAS is on, so there's a stability computer that helps me fly the rocket straight. I'm going to F5 for safety because we've got our brave Kerbal crew in here. And I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, space. And that is definitely not nominal. Something is very much wrong with this rocket. So, this is a huge problem. Not good.
A little bit earlier than the 13 crew did.
Yeah.
As it turns out, something was wrong.
Can you say
Well, I actually think that that something wasn't actually connected.
It looks like it did fall apart. I'm not sure what happened. The good news is the crew is safe.
Crew lived!
Yes!
Maybe I should have programmed in that launch escape system after all.
We like the endings where the crew comes out okay.
It's all good. Now, normally we could have used the launch escape system to pull the crew to safety and then deploy the parachutes and float it down safely. What just happened, though? Why did our rocket fall apart? That was actually...
Ooh, ouch.
Dr. Jones, were any of your launches ever scrubbed? And if so, what is that like, you know, getting ready for launch and just not going? Because I know SpaceX also had a scrub today, too.
That's a great story. We had a sketch flight where we were attempting to launch on STS-68, and our main engines would fire up at 6 seconds prior to liftoff, and boosters would launch at 0. So at 6 seconds, we feel a big rumble. It's like being on a skyscraper or an earthquake, and we could feel the shake and lean forward with the ignition of those main engines. And so mentally counting down 4, 3, 2, 1, waiting for the big kick at 0. And we got to about 1 second when I the big jolt. We got instead an alarm, master alarm, blaring through the cockpit, and then we lost thrust and sort of sat there on the launch pad. The computer found an overheat in one of the main engine turbo pumps, and we shut down and didn't fly for about 6 weeks. It was a what's called a pad abort, last second abort. Not a good situation, but the safety systems did work from flying with a bad engine.
Wow.
And that prevented the entire thing to go. It basically figured out something was wrong, and it kept you from getting up and then figuring out that it was going to go even worse in a little bit. It just kept you from going all over.
It did. That's really well. Saturn V never had, as I recall, they never had any of the Saturn V's do a pad abort or a shutdown once they started their 5 main engine.
They never had a pad. Oh, wow. So every time we don't still launch stuff on that. In fact, there's only a couple of them sitting around, but that rocket was in service for the Apollo program. Did we use it for other things as well?
It flew all the manned Apollo flights, a couple of unmanned tests before the first manned ride. That was the first time the people rode a Saturn V. And then after the last Apollo mission, Apollo 17, they had one more Saturn V that orbited the Skylab space station, and that was an uncrewed launch.
Oh, okay. And I've got to see one of the. Oh, there we go. Chat's all saying Skylab. Like 5 people in chat say Skylab 2. But let's see. I think I found the problem. Go
That
ahead.
you might have a strut connected to. Yeah, there it is.
Yes.
You found it.
Yeah.
I did in fact see the strut that had errantly connected to the launch tower. Somebody welded the rocket to the launch tower so that it couldn't decouple itself. As it turns out, not a great way to get into space by welding yourself to the tower.
Which, by the way, didn't they just blast the rocket with water after the engines shut down, or even for the regular launch?
In fact, there's a flood of water that's released onto the launch pad. That happened with Saturn, also with the shuttle. And the idea behind the water flooding the pad, it's something like 900,000 gallons per minute, is to muffle the sound from booster and main engine blast and reduce the echoes of sound bouncing back up off the launch pad and actually damaging the space shuttle. So almost all rocket systems today, when they're that powerful, use the water compression to reduce the acoustic shock to the system. It can actually knock off tiles off the shuttle and damage the structure of the rocket.
Are those the swimming pools underneath?
Swimming pools?
Well, underneath the shuttle, we had under each booster a big red plastic water bag, essentially. It looked like a water mattress under each booster to immediately dampen the shock of ignition. And then there was a Niagara of water spewing from jet nozzles underneath the engine that poured into the flame trench and absorbed some of the bounce back from the acoustic energy.
Jeez. So to get the rocket into space, we spray it with a lot of with a lot of water as well. It's amazing, like just the things, like you watch the launch happen and you see it, and then you have somebody explain kind of the details of what's going on. There's a great video on YouTube that like goes into detail of stop motion, like here's the shuttle's doing this and here's the shuttle's doing this, and just watching that video you learn so much about how much thinking goes into getting these things into space. It's not just slap pieces together and then go.
I'll have to watch that and learn what I really went through.
Learn what you really went through, right?
What did I sign up for again?
All right, I'm going to try another launch here. It looks like everything's looking good. I'm going to throttle up. I'm going to lock the panel. I've got my SAS engaged. I'm going to F5 for safety. I'm on the pad. I don't have any weird welding happening behind the back of the rocket there. Let's see if this is going to work. 3, 2, 1. Space with a question mark. Oh, what? Okay. Apparently the launch tower fell over, but luckily it was stopped by another launch tower, and we were able to clear the tower safely.
There we go. That's all that matters, clearing the tower.
Hashtag don't tell NASA about what was going on down here with our launch decouplers. Can I? I can't actually get a very good shot of them.
You guys got Tom Hanks and crew on the way, huh?
Yeah, we do have Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks and company is on the way. I should have named the Kerbals that, shouldn't I?
Yeah. It's actually one of the viewers.
Lovely jokes that I played Tom Hanks in reality.
Oh. Do we have some other questions in chat? It looks like the questions are coming fast and furious.
I've got a few. Sapphire Orchid asked one earlier. Now that we're launching, can they actually see anything while they're launching from inside that capsule?
Ooh, that's a good question. I know in Kerbal Space Program we can see the sky.
Apollo, they did not have a great window except over the door of their hatch. There was a boost protective cover that protected the rocket in case the launch escape motor stopped. And so there was only one little window over the hatch. But after 2 minutes into the flight, that would peel off with the jettison of the launch escape tower and all their 5 windows that were available.
Then they could see. Okay, we've got a couple little windows here that we can look out of, but I'm kind of doing the IVA views from what the Kerbonauts here would see in the game. And am I turning over? Yes. Excellent. So continue on. Let's just keep, everybody knows the launch profile here, right? Ooh, a little wobbly. So let's keep on doing questions while I go through the basics of getting these guys into orbit. It looks like we're just about to separate the first stage here. How many Gs are we pulling right now? Only 2.6 right now, so...
Let's see. Awoken by My Fears asked earlier about when you were spacewalking. Did it actually kind of feel like you were falling, or did you even feel the height, or did it just feel like you were standing still?
It felt as if I was floating around the big motionless space station. Now, if I look down, wherever down happened to be at that moment, you could see the Earth gliding by underneath, but that motion seemed disconnected from what I was doing. So to me, it felt as if I was just hovering around a big space station. And so I had no sensation of motion. no sensation of height. You know, I had no fears of letting go because I knew that I would just be buoyant, bobbing along with the station.
My sort of feeling about weightlessness has always been that at first, at least, it would have to feel like you were falling. Just like all of us when we experience those moments of like lesser G's on like airplanes or roller coasters. Is there a time when you do feel like you're sort of like suddenly you're like sort of dropping, and you feel that dropping sensation? Does that go away quickly?
That's a great question. I think that it depends on the individual. I've read friend Jerry Littinger's book, I think it's called Off Planet, where he describes going on an EVA from the Russian Mir space station. When he visited the airlock at night, he had a terrifying sensation. He was hurtling towards the Earth with the space station on top of him. And I never felt anything like that. You know, my first spacewalk was 4 days into the flight. By then I was completely adapted to free fall. And so I've heard of other people going outside the shuttle or the station and having a sense of vertigo, but that's never occurred to me.
I feel like I would feel as if I was falling the entire time I was in space, which is why I'm staying here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, you have to separate what you know of physics from what your stomach or your mind is telling you. And I didn't have the falling sensation, but it was very interesting how I could make the direction of up change to whatever I wanted. So if I was looking outside, it didn't matter where the Earth was. I would just choose the local up direction, and then I was quite happy with that. And it was completely mentally rotatable within half a second. You just click, and you choose a different up.
That's awesome. That's kind of like a personal experience. I've been scuba diving on kind of deep sea oil rigs, and it's kind of the same sort of thing. Like you get down to maybe 80 feet, 60 feet, something like that, and you can kind of see the fish swimming around. And the fish don't really care which way is up and down. They kind of swim along the rig pilings as if that's their frame of reference. And if you're there, you can kind of tilt yourself to the side, and all of a sudden it's like, well, look at this. Now it looks like this may be up. And you really have to get the context of the surface of the water or the floor or something like that before you really kind of say, oh, wait a second, the bubbles are going that way. And I guess you don't have a lot of bubbles in space, right?
Yeah.
But you have the underwater training in the big neutral buoyancy lab in Houston, and occasionally we'll get so lost in the work underwater that you will have to go look at the bubbles.
Really?
Understand which way the surface is. But of course, you just drop a tool and you'll watch which way it goes, and that's down. That's down.
Well, let me know whenever I can sign up to hop in the national EVA training pool over there. I'll be happy since I have so much experience.
Well, I get room for you. There's 6 million gallons worth of water and volume. And in fact, they do rent it out these days for other projects.
Really? What's the name of that? There's like an official name for that facility, isn't there?
I think Sawyer knows it's the NBL, Buoyancy Lab.
That's right, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. That's right. And there was another question over here. Where was it at? Bad News Baron, dude. First off, Bad News, thanks for stopping by. Bad News is another streamer who does a bunch of space simulation sort of stuff. He was asking, are we going to fully simulate the basic problems that happened during 13? Is there a way to simulate it in KSP? Yes, absolutely, Baron. We've designed this rocket so that we can have a bit of a problem with one of the tanks. We're going to set up for the same sort of free return trajectory that the Apollo 13 mission initially was on before it changed its trajectory for its landing site. I'm not doing it exactly like simulating exactly what happened because I'm in an equatorial inclination right now, whereas Apollo 13 would have been in an inclined sort of orbit since it didn't launch from the equator, right? But yes, we are trying to replicate many of the things that actually occurred in Apollo 13 in Kerbal Space Program. That was a great question, dude, and thank you for stopping by. Outstanding.
This is all. I mean, our rocket's doing pretty good, so they're almost in space at this point.
I mean, we're good. I mean, we've got a 95-kilometer apoapsis and a 54-kilometer periapsis, so we're going to dip down into our atmosphere. Our atmosphere in Kerbal Space Program starts at 70 kilometers, so not exactly like real life. But we are clear of the atmosphere right now. We still have a little bit of drag occurring, so you can see my apoapsis. I'm actually losing a little bit of orbital energy, the kinetic energy that I put into this rocket by firing the engine of the upper stage, well, of all the stages, really, right? And you can see that my orbit is degrading a little bit because I'm still in the atmosphere. You see that apoapsis going down. It's not going to be that big of a deal because once we get up here In another 10 minutes, we're about to pop out of the atmosphere. I imagine we're going to land somewhere around 94 kilometers once we exit, and we should be good to go for the lunar burn. But does the actual ISS, it has to boost itself on occasion, correct?
Yeah, it's about 140 miles, and it will be dragged down slowly by impact of the very few air molecules and individual oxygen and nitrogen atoms that are up there. So every few months, every couple of months, it will fire a burst from its own built-in thrusters there in some of the Russian modules, the Zvezda in particular. And or if there's a cargo ship that's docked there that has some extra fuel, they'll fire the remaining fuel in the cargo ship to boost the altitude up periodically. And if you look at a graph of the space station's altitude, it'll go initial altitude, it'll drift slowly down a couple, and it'll spike up again 10 miles, and that keeps up at 240 where the drag is fairly minimal, and yet the cost of getting up that high.
Excellent. That was actually something we added to our space station. We have a model of the ISS that we built in Kerbal Space Program, and we had to add, it was the Zvezda, wasn't it, that has the engines on it that can be used for miniature, kind of small boost, but normally they use the like a Progress or something like that to push it up.
You're right, you know. And then we used to use the Shuttle to give it a good kick, because we always had some extra margin on the Shuttle before we undocked. And they've used the cargo vehicles like the ATV and Progress to do the routine boosts. That's quite a good simulation flying into night there. I like that.
Oh, I've actually, with the stream, I've actually got it turned up so you can see it. I can turn the light way down, and I'll do that right quick, and you can kind of see there's some lights down in the city. It's very dark up here. We're not getting a lot of light on the craft when I turn it down. I usually kind of amp the light up a little bit, but the game is just beautiful. I love the way that the game looks. You can see the cities down there, and you'll see the moon in the background, and we're flying over the night side of the Kerbal planet right now.
Wow.
Impressive. I love the movie Apollo 13, and then of course, you know, technology of making movies is advanced. When Gravity came out a couple years ago, it was superb visuals of the Earth. I thought it was, even though it's all digital, it looks very realistic.
Absolutely.
You would know.
Right? It's like, hey, that looks just about right.
Of the people on the stream.
No, it was well done. At least the visuals were well done.
At least, thank you for putting that in there, by the way. I appreciate.
Not so much.
Yes, I appreciate the fact that you said that.
2 hours we could go over all of the arguments we had with the movie, but you know, it was all in the service of a good story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's see here. I'm not in a very circular orbit. I'm at basically 96 by 83. I think that's going to be good enough. And this is one of the things that the Soyuz does, right? The Soyuz, whenever it launches up to the ISS, will actually launch itself into a little bit of a shallower, not as predictable orbit, and then they'll clean it up with, remember, there's 7 full burns before they get up to the ISS, and I'm kind of in a not very clean orbit right now, just like a Soyuz after its first 2 or 3 two burns would be in. So I'm safe, I'm in orbit, but it's not the cleanest, most predictable orbit. And then I could go on to kind of clean this up. In the interest of time, I don't think I'm going to clean it up. Maybe let's do some more questions. Sawyer, can you get some more questions while I see what I can do here in the game?
Yeah, because it's kind of hard to see in
chat. The space shuttle had that same problem. You know, we would and get almost into orbit when the main engine shut down, but half an orbit later, you'd be coming back into the atmosphere unless you fired a final burst from the orbital maneuvering engines to actually put you into a near circular orbit. So deliberate move so that when you let go of the external tank, it was not in orbit yet, and it would then drop back into the atmosphere, burn up. So it's the way you disposed of the tank was to wait for your final injection burn until you dump the tank.
That's exactly something that we replicate in Kerbal Space Program all the time. You can kind of design your rocket so that the amount of delta V or fuel that you have lets you get rid of a stage before you're in a full orbital trajectory, so it kind of falls back down and simulates getting burned up in the atmosphere. That's something we actually teach a class in how to design your rocket so that you don't make space junk, because a lot of people's Kerbal Space Program saves will have like 18 million pieces of debris flying around, because every time they launch a rocket, they just leave the booster in orbit. It's no big deal, whatever. But it's really cool. There's my drink alert. That happens in real life, and we can kind of replicate it using a video game.
And that's good space citizenship, and that's what we're looking for from rocket designers, satellite operators.
We are going to start using that good space citizenship. That is, can we use that phrase?
Yeah, so. We have to now.
I love that phrase.
I just saw a question from Kaiden Tabaz, and also I shared this question. How did you, Das and Tom Jones get connected to each other? Like, how did that happen?
I'm pointing at him right
Wade
there.
Sawyer, he one who made the intro because we did Talking Space together, and then he got the idea for bringing us together on the commemorative full year.
Yep, we've done 2 Talking Space episodes together. One of them, unfortunately, got lost when we moved sites. And I also finally met him at an event called Space Fest, which is a great event that last year was held out in California. Normally it's in Arizona, where a whole bunch of astronauts get together, and you can meet them and talk with them and get their autographs. And that was when we finally met in person.
Excellent. And thank you again, Sawyer, for setting up this. This is a first for Twitch. On a Twitch live stream, never before have we had an actual astronaut. So this is like a first. I wonder, can we get this in a book somewhere? Is there a book that records these things?
There's a great book called Spacewalking that I could recommend.
You should. Dude, let's do that right quick. We have some links in chat, and maybe let's do a question or talk about the book a little bit. I looked so hard. I was trying to find a copy, and I could not get a copy.
Popular stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
It was just sold out.
Skywalking is my story of my 4 flights on the space shuttle and the last one up to the space station. And it's the title, Skywalking, is drawn from the experience, the sensation of actually going out and doing 3 construction spacewalks at the station. I think I was out there for a little over 19 hours, and that's got to be the professional highlight of my life. So you want to strap on a spacesuit and get the impression of what that's really like from inside the helmet, and read Skywalking. I think it's one of the best shuttle experience books you can find.
Excellent. And there was a link in chat. We've put some links over there. So if you're interested in checking out the book, there's a link to Dr. Jones' website, astronauttomjones.com, and then twitter.com. TomJones_astro is how you can follow him and look into some of the books he's written and that sort of stuff. Excellent.
Yep, and it's
got
got
a new one
Amazon
coming
links.
out next year. Next March, I'll have one out called Ask the Astronaut, which is sort of based on the theme we're doing right here.
That sounds amazing. Ask the Astronaut. It's really awesome that you can kind of be accessible in this manner and kind of help people know, hey, this is a real thing that happens, and they're real people, and they go up there and they train really hard, and they risk their life, and they encounter some really cool things, and we appreciate you for it, that's for sure.
And your books are awesome.
Apollo 13 guys were my heroes growing up, and along with their other Apollo colleagues. So it's great to have a chance to look back 45 years and appreciate the risks that these guys took. And I think this was one of NASA's finest achievements, even though they didn't make it to the moon.
So one of the most successful failures, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of cleaning up here. Let me just talk about what I've accomplished. I did a little bit of a burn. I burned to increase my apoapsis up to 100 kilometers, and then I waited till I was at my apoapsis, and I burned a little bit more, so I have a mostly circular orbit, right? 100 by 101. It's close enough. It's good enough for government work, right? So now I'm going to be plotting the trajectory out to the moon, and I'm going to be trying to put in a free return trajectory, which was something that we plan to do in real life, so that if something went wrong, the moon's gravity would actually sling me back around and bring me back home. So I'm going to be setting that up. You guys keep on going with questions while I set up a free return trajectory in KSP here.
All right, yeah, I've got a few that I can bunch together, because normally you can see the 3 Kerbals on the bottom right of the screen. You can see one of them over Das's shoulder, and they are just loving what's going on in space right now. What was it like when you first got into space? What happened, like, was there any vertigo or dizziness, and what happened, like, inside your body almost?
2 stories about that. The first flight on STS-59, I was on Endeavour, and first ride up, and I was on the mid-deck or the downstairs of the shuttle. A few feet to my left, I could reach out and hold hands if I wanted to with Linda Godwin, who was my crewmate, but she'd been there before, so this was old hat to her. But when I first got to engine cutoff, we called it main engine cutoff, MECO. The engine shut down within about a half second, G's to nothing, to 0G. And so that sensation was a sensation of sort of coming up out of your seat a half an inch before the straps held you down. But the way I really confirmed that I was feeling free fall for the first time was to take off my left spacesuit glove and then just let it go in front of me and watch it just tumble over and over in front of my face. And this huge grin came over my face as I confirmed that I was really in space for the first time. And the second story was the same moment on my 4th flight on Atlantis on the way to the space station. When the engines cut off, I knew this was going to happen, but I carefully noted my reaction. And so when the engines cut off, instead of lying on my back with a giant force on my chest from those 3 Gs of acceleration, as soon as that came off, it felt like the entire room rotated 90 degrees forward, and then I was sitting up in a room again. So an instant transformation in about a half a second from lying down to sitting up quietly and getting ready to get out of my seat.
Wow, that seems a little disorienting almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, very smooth, even though it was magical. It was interesting to see how your body handles that kind of transition. Story Musgrave on my Columbia flight, he would close his eyes when the engines were about to shut down. So he would feel like he was jumping off a cliff, he said, when he felt the loss of acceleration. And I tried the same thing sitting next to him, and I didn't feel a thing. I just felt this very smooth rotation up to upright. That powerful cue from the ceiling and the walls is just what got to my brain the quickest, I guess.
Yeah.
There we go.
That is crazy. Those were 2 questions, by the way. That was from Gene, one of the moderators, and Macaroni Cheese. Interesting usernames here.
Excellent name.
My bad news is that I have to go get dinner. This has been an absolute pleasure, Dr. Jones. It's been great to hang out with you, Doss and Sawyer. This has been really, really cool. All the people in chat, thank you. I'm very sad that I don't get to see the perilous rest of this journey and to see whether or not our explosion actually explodes.
What explosion? What are you talking about?
But I will. I'll be checking on it tomorrow. Maybe I don't know if you're gonna. I assume that you'll put this live for VOD.
Absolutely, we will.
Great.
Good
Well,
job,
it's great to hang out with all of you.
Hank,
Thank you.
so much, man. I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah.
Yes, good night, Hank.
DFTBA.
Bon appetit.
There, all of chat blows up with DFTBA. All right, there goes Hank. Excellent. And
He's a great guy. He does SciShow and Crash Course, which are great educational programs. If you haven't heard of them, Dr. Jones, they're awesome.
Absolutely. So, guys, give me just a second. Go nail another question out, and I'm going to fix our overlays here and take Hank out of here. And then we'll get back to the mission.
Let's see a few other questions that we've got here. There's a whole queue of them that I've got here. I may not do them all in order, so if I don't ask your question, which may be a lot of them, my apologies, because there's a whole bunch of them, and they're all really good questions here. So you were talking about the EVAs before. How long does it take to actually prepare for an EVA, and what is the whole process for that? Because hopefully we don't have to do any of those on this mission, but what would it be like?
It's a several hours process. You wake up in the morning, you have a quick breakfast, and then you jump right into a checklist that guides you through all the steps to prepare to go outside. And you've rehearsed this on the ground in the space shuttle trainers back in Houston. You have a colleague who's basically your valet who helps you get dressed. And that person's called the IVA, the intravehicular assistant, if you will. And that person helps you get dressed. You start right at the underwear level. You know, first thing you do is you put on one of those very graceful and sophisticated adult diapers. And you'll need that outside for the 8 hours that you're working out there. You put on your long underwear over that. They're just a pair of light long johns. And then over that is the liquid cooling garment, which has those lacy tubes of water flow that keep your body cool when you're outside in the spacesuit. So you don the liquid cooling and ventilation garment. And now you've got the basics of getting into the spacesuit. Put on some wool socks as well to keep your toes warm out there. And then you can start climbing into the spacesuit. You put on the boots and pants first, all in one piece, shove your feet down into those. And then you float upwards. This is the claustrophobic part. You've got to float upwards from the waist of the upper part of the suit. It's called the upper torso. And you try to squirm your way like a caterpillar up through that upper chest part of the suit. Pop your 2 arms out and your neck through the neck ring, and once you get your head out, you feel good again. But it's about a 30-second process to squirm up through that upper torso. And then your assistant, Mark Polanski, in my case on Atlantis, will help you get your gloves and your helmet on and start latching all the tools to the front of your chest. That whole process might take about an hour and a half to get dressed and into the suit. And then you begin a process once the helmet is sealed on of purging your body of nitrogen, reducing the nitrogen that's dissolved in your blood. So you start to breathe pure oxygen inside the suit for about 90 minutes before you can actually depressurize the airlock and go outside. So end to end, it's something like a 4.5 hour process before you can start your spacewalk.
Well, that's just to get dressed to go outside.
Just get dressed to go outside. Nice.
And it's good that you take extra care with those steps because it's life and death, and you've got to make sure absolutely that the suit's got its integrity. And then we do a number of leak checks. We time that pre-breathe to remove the nitrogen from your blood, and it's only after both astronauts have gone through that entire process with their IVA guiding them through that they're ready to go.
Excellent. So I've got a bit of a figure 8 set up here. It's not a very good figure 8, honestly, because I have some inclination problems right now. So I need to get those fixed. I may just do a little bit of a correction burn. But I am ready to execute the burn here. And that's what NASA normally does, right, Dr. Jones? They're just like, man, it's close enough. We'll fix it later.
Oh, I hope not.
Luckily.
There's a quote from Lovell that goes along the lines of something like, "I hope those guys know what they're doing." Down there.
I hope they know what they're doing.
He was saying that on the way back from the moon because of the re-entry procedures they had radioed up to him, but I think it will apply here too.
Excellent.
Wow.
So I'm close enough. Now, way out here, I could just fix my inclination way down here, but since I've already got all this done, I'm going to put that in. We're going to have significant issues getting home. Who knows? But I've got a little bit of a free return trajectory here set up. You can see my periapsis coming back home. I'm actually going to go out to the moon. I'm going to use the moon's gravity to kind of sling me back around and decrease some of that orbital energy that I put into my rocket, and it's actually going to bring me back home with a lower periaps than I'm currently flying at, right? So that'll make me enter the atmosphere. I'll lose all of my kinetic energy to the atmospheric drag down there, and that'll basically get me home. Now, that's not exactly what we're going to do, because we're going to need to make a course correction that's going to take us off this free return and then try to get back onto it, which is what happened in Apollo 13. So I'm going to do this burn. You guys keep on going with questions.
Awesome. Let's see. While we're talking about the Apollo 13 mission, were there any problems that occurred on any of your 4 missions?
Well, we never got on the way to the moon. Obviously, the shuttle was only limited to about 300 miles in altitude, so we didn't have the capacity to get out of low Earth orbit. So, we couldn't expose ourselves to being lost in space in that way. But, you do have to fire your engines to come home. One of the interesting things about getting into orbit and going 5 miles a second to fall around the planet for 2 weeks or more is that you realize that your little body is hurtling along at 17,500 miles an hour, and you have to do something dramatic to get back home again. You're falling around the planet in orbit, but you're not like everybody else on the ground. You've got this incredible velocity, this incredible kinetic energy that you have to lose. So that's the challenge, to fire the engines and then use the atmosphere to slow down. And that's a very challenging physics experiment. On my missions, I think the biggest problems we encountered were the pad abort, which I just talked about a little while ago, where we came within 2 seconds of launching without one of our engines running. That would have been a very dicey first few minutes of the flight, and we were glad that we didn't go flying that day. The second big problem I had was not so much a catastrophic or exciting failure, but it was my first spacewalk attempt on Columbia. We could not actually get the door outside to open. And as simple and mundane as that sounds, it prevented us from getting our 2 spacewalks done on that mission. We had a jammed hatch mechanism. In other words, the doorknob mechanism was not going to work, and we could not open the door. And we might have had a big problem had we had a case where we had to do emergency repairs on the outside of the shuttle. We did not have a way to get outside by the normal route, so we would have to come up with some extreme measures to bash the hatch open had we had to go out and do those repairs. Fortunately, the Columbia worked just great except for that jammed doorknob, and we were able to come home without doing an emergency spacewalk. And so I think those were the 2 biggies.
That raises like an interesting question. Is there only one way in and out of the space shuttle when you're on orbit?
On orbit, we have 2 doors that can be opened from inside the crew cabin. There's the door that leads into and then out of the airlock. And so that's a pair of hatches that have to be both closed to depressurize the air from the airlock, and then you open the outer hatch once you've reached vacuum. Then there's a side hatch. That's the one that you crawl in on the launch pad, and the one you come out of after you've landed back on the runway. And that one would require, if you had to open it to get outside, you'd have to let out all of the air in the cabin. So everybody would have to be in their spacesuits in order to open that. And we considered that as an emergency option when we had the jammed airlock hatch. And what the ground engineers at Mission Control figured out that with all of the air cooling that's required to keep your computers and systems running, that letting the air out of that cabin would probably overheat and destroy most of those systems. Then you wouldn't be able to get home either. So we really had to use only that aft airlock hatch to get outside, and we were going to have to chisel our way through that with a hacksaw and a chisel, and then find a way to seal it when we came back in. On Apollo 13, they only had the one, well, the command module had two hatches, the side hatch that they boarded the spacecraft and exited the spacecraft from, and then there was the docking hatch at the nose that they could also use.
Hey, we have the same thing. We have a side hatch and we have the docking hatch. Nice.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of people in here who probably want to be astronauts or want to be in the aerospace field specifically. Any suggestions for people of what to do to A, become an astronaut or work at NASA, or B, what to do to make themselves stand out?
Yeah, the good news is that there are many more opportunities, I think, coming in the next 10 to 20 years for getting into space yourself. Personal trip to space tourism is going to be an option. You've got these commercial space companies coming online like Virgin Galactic and X-Core. Those are going to provide suborbital flights. And then I think SpaceX and Boeing, when they operate their space taxis to the space station, will sell seats on those vehicles to go to an orbital hotel within 10 years. And so you'll be able to work for those companies as a spaceplane pilot or a hotel operator or an aerospace tour guide, if you will, and maybe even be a private space worker on a private laboratory that are established in space. So, the key to all of these career fields is to find a space-related field that you are really in love with, get your academic credentials in college, and maybe even go on to a master's degree after you sort of pick your direction. But get really good at what you do on the ground. Have fun with it. Get motivated because you love the job. And don't pick something that you think NASA is going to like or some space company is going to like. Pick the one thing that you really enjoy doing, because if you don't make it, you want to have a great career even on the ground, and that's certainly possible. I had made up my mind that if I didn't make the astronaut corps, at least I was going to be a planetary scientist and explore the solar system with robots. That would have been my second career choice. So that was my job, was to pick a career field that I would really enjoy doing for 20, 30, 40 years.
Interesting.
Excellent.
Yeah. Because a lot of people think you have
make
to
yourself an expert and have a great resume, and then when you get ready to apply, then you've got not only the real enthusiasm that comes from within, but then you've got the credentials stacked up with a boss who thinks that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Excellent. Someone in chat said space hotels are also going to need housekeeping. I wonder if a space hotel would be like robots cleaning things up, or are they going to have maybe not as technical staff staffing some of the things up there? I wonder how that'll be interesting to see how that comes out.
Now, I think you'll do a little bit of everything. You'll be the spacecraft pilot, but you'll also have some cleanup duties, and that was the same on the space shuttle. We had lots of cross training where we did housekeeping every day, but we also did all the cosmic stuff like docking with a space station and getting ready for a spacewalk. You had to roll it all into one job.
Excellent.
Part-time astronaut, part-time repairman. There you go.
Jack of all trades.
So I've got a couple things going on here. I am ready now. I'm on my trans-lunar trajectory. You guys can see. And we've actually got, Dr. Jones, we use one-body physics here. So we have kind of a sphere of influence thing. Right now, only Kerbin's gravity is affecting us. And at a certain point, we'll get close enough to the moon that the game, for simplicity's sake, will switch us over to only calculating our trajectory off of the moon's gravity, right? As opposed to real life where everything that has mass has gravity and can pull you in different directions. The game simplifies it a little bit. So I've got quite a ways. I've got a day before I would actually get that lunar encounter where I switch into the moon's sphere of influence for the game's calculations. But pretty soon here, it's going to be time for me to flip around and extract the landing module from the upper stage of the Saturn V here. So that's what I'm going to be doing while you guys keep on talking.
All right. Another people a lot have been asking, because we're talking about all the space stuff. You've been on 4 shuttle missions, so what's it like when you get home? And has it been easier to transition after each time you flew, or was it still just as difficult to readjust to gravity?
I think with each flight, the experience of readapting to Earth's gravity occurred more quickly, and your body says essentially, oh, I remember this, so it's not as dramatic an occurrence. The same applies when you get into space too. Each time I arrived in space, it seemed like I adapted to that new situation a little bit more easily. Some people, as you've heard, some people get space sick. If you read Skywalking, you read about my initial fun adventures on the first day in space. But the medicine that cured space sickness for me on my first flight was something that I just took on the launch pad on my other 3 flights, and then I would never have a single problem or symptom once I arrived in space. I arrived in space ready to work and with a great appetite, just because of the meds that you could take on the launch pad. Then coming home again, you've lived in life, you've lived in 1G for your entire life, so it's a familiar rut or habit that you're in. And it doesn't take very long for you to figure out how to walk again. Maybe about 30 minutes before you can get out of your lounge chair after landing and start moving around the medical van. You don't even feel heavy after about 30 minutes. You feel a normal weight. And what's really the long-term tail of the experience is about 3 days on a short shuttle mission, about 3 days after landing before your fine sense of balance comes back. And so you've got to be careful that you don't drive for those first 3 days. You don't bend over to pick up a penny that you dropped on the floor, because you're just going to fall over right onto your face if you try that. So you just need to take it easy, take it slow, hang on to a chair or a wall as you try to bend over and get down on your knees or pick up something. You just can't be aggressive with it. The space station astronauts take about anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks to get all of their physical strength and coordination back, and sometimes it's about an entire week before they feel comfortable in 1G again.
Hey, at least you get a comfy chair.
You spend a lot of time horizontal, as I understand it, coming back from the space station. That first week you don't want to get up very much.
I mean, to be honest, that sounds like me on a normal day, but I'd imagine
it sounds like a normal day.
Moving around after.
So I've flipped.
It would be nice if you came home from space and somebody waited on you hand and foot. But I found that as soon as I got back to Houston, it was time to take out the garbage and get the lawn mowed. It was there was no time off. You were right back into it.
They didn't put you in a spa resort for a week afterwards. It's or a month afterwards or anything like that.
No. I got a vacation about a month after we landed, after we got through all the debriefs and post-flight tests. The space station folks, I have to take off my hats to them, because they land after 6 months in orbit and they get a whole battery of medical tests. So they get technical debriefings. They are guinea pigs for a number of medical experiments, and then they are sent right out on the road doing NASA public affairs speeches. They go to see Congress, and they sometimes get a trip to the White House, and they don't get a vacation for 2 or 3 months after they get back. It's just an amazing transition right back into work when they get home.
Wow. You ever drop anything after coming back?
That's such a great question. That's such a great question. I saw it in chat.
Yeah, Sawyer may have heard this story already, but on my Columbia flight, I was gone for 18 days, and we landed. This readaptation process occurs. I wound up back in the medical lab at Kennedy Space Center, where you get your checkup initially. And so I was feeling pretty decent, sitting there in a chair, and someone handed me a cold glass of grape juice. And it looked delicious, and I couldn't wait to get my first sip of this nice snack that the nurse had provided for me. And I did not remember how hard you have to squeeze your fingers together to hang on to a glass that someone hands you. And so,
oh, wow.
I thought it was just going to sort of float there in between my fingertips. And when I grabbed it, she handed it to me, I let it slip right through my fingers. It crashed to the floor, got this big purple grape juice spot on the brand new carpet. So I felt terrible, just ruining their brand new medical lab floor. But those are the occupational hazards. One friend of mine told me that he took him several days to remember to not just let his toothbrush go and let it float there in front of him while he brushed his teeth. It just crashed to the floor. So you've got to be careful about what you're hanging on to and how to hang on to it.
And that was only after 18 days.
Yeah, you get very comfortable in the free fall environment. It just becomes a habit that you don't even think about. I think that's what amazed me, is that it becomes second nature after about 2 days. You don't even think that you're in free fall. It's just the way things are. That's the planet that you're on. In other words, you're in that environment, and it's all automatic. Moving around is just as automatic as walking is down here.
That's awesome. So somebody asked if you paid for the carpet cleaning bill.
Yeah, I'm sure that was just all part of the NASA.
It's covered.
Expense that they have to plan in for returning crews. And I'm probably not the worst offender. I'm sure there were people who came back and who were a little queasy after they got back home.
Tax dollars
that's
at work,
sometimes
right?
the case for the space station astronauts who have a little vertigo and a little nausea after they come home as they readapt. It takes several days for them, and it's all caused by your inner ears, which provide the balance cues for you for fine motor coordination, and those shut off after a few days in space. Your brain ignores them, and so when you come back home and they start to generate signals again and feed those into your brain, the brain gets confused and it's hearing this information for the first time. It's not calibrated. It doesn't really know which way down is, and you get these conflicting cues, and you tend to get upset stomach.
I know we're running a little short on time with you because we're coming near the end, so I'll save some of the better questions. EJ, who's another streamer who does a lot with space shuttles, he asked a question earlier asking about what it was like installing the Destiny module on the ISS, and I'll throw in, what's it like seeing it now being used and all the science coming out of it?
Yeah, I get a big charge out of watching video from the space station, because nearly every interview that I watch the crew give, Terry Virts is up there right now with Scott Kelly, whenever they do a press conference, they're in the Destiny lab, which is basically the control hub of the space station, which where all of the big operations, robot arm work, a lot of the U.S. research takes place there, and it happens to be basically their sound stage for doing interviews. So I get to see the module that my crew put in place back in on STS-98 2001, and so it's very gratifying to see that is still the mainstay of U.S. research up there. There are two other labs nearby, the Japanese and the European lab, and the international crew shares work in all three of those laboratory modules. And in fact, the Russians even come up there and help, and vice versa. We go back and help out in their facilities. So it's neat that the laboratory Destiny was so well designed after we installed it. It's still going on all cylinders. 14 years later, and it's probably got another 10 years of lifetime ahead of it. And installing that, I think, was a wonderful tribute to the teamwork, the folks in mission control, all of our instructors who taught us how to work underwater to train for that spacewalk, got Bob Kirby and I ready to do our 3 spacewalks in the most efficient way possible. And when you consider that we prepared for about 3 years to get ready for that mission, and it all came off almost flawlessly, I just attribute that to the playing skills of our lead EVA instructor, Carrie Knox. She did a super job. Tomas Gonzalez-Torres was her assistant, and he taught us how to use all the tools out there, and he later supervised one of the Hubble servicing missions in the latter part of the shuttle's career. So those were superb people, and then we had some great help from mission control while we were actually outside dealing with problems as they arose. So wonderful, wonderful work to get a chance to do, and I felt like we were representing that whole team outside.
Excellent. I've actually got...
I'm sorry, I'm saying especially for this mission, that teamwork is critical. Yeah,
exactly the model that Apollo 13 taught all of the NASA folks about. And if there was anything that underlined how teamwork could save something that was a near disaster, it was Apollo 13. And, we always had the confidence when I was on my flights that if necessary, they would pull out all the stops, Apollo 13 style, to help us. When we had the jammed airlock hatch, they tore into the problem with every resource that they had for about 3 days before they had to throw up their hands and say, too risky to try to bash your way outside. We're just going to cancel the spacewalks, and you'll get another chance. So I was happy with that.
Jeez. So I know that your time is your time is limited here. It's just about time for me to have a little bit of a problem with the spark in an oxygen tank, and I'm gonna hope this works. We did it. I do want to get this, and I have one more thing. Hopefully, I have time to show you here. At this point, right, we've got our craft on the right trajectory. We're a little ways from Earth. I think that it was just over 200,000 miles from Earth when they had the issue with the actual Apollo 13. And we've got our little bit of a simulation here. So I'm going to see if I can run a problem, can we start the oxygen tank sort of style, and see what happens to our craft here. So let's see if this works out. The planned sort of issue we've got. And let's see what we get. But I need to... Okay, why do I have no control authority? All of a sudden, I have no control authority. Are my batteries locked out? Ah, my batteries are not locked out. And my orbit is degrading. Okay. Well, here I am.
Then.
Yeah.
Tom, can you throw Can you plug some of your stuff where people can find you, where people can buy your books
Sure.
and learn more?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you can go to my website anytime. It's astronauttomjones.com. You read about my books there, a lot of my mission background, and my Twitter feed is there. You'll be able to see what I'm doing currently. Then check out the individual books. I've got Skywalking, the memoir, which is a recounting of my shuttle experiences and the spacewalks. Visit to the space station to help build that facility. Planetology is from National Geographic. It's a great tour of the solar system and the latest results from the robots around the solar system, along with some of my astronaut photography. And I think my World War II book that you mentioned earlier on, thanks guys, was Hellhawks. It's about a P-47 Thunderbolt outfit in World War II, and these guys are my heroes when I was growing up reading about flying, and they gave me the flying bug. And 70 years since the end of World War II, and I still know a few of these World War II vets. They are just incredible individuals. To think that at age 20 or 22, they were saving the world. That's a tribute that we will owe them for the rest of their lives and for generations to come.
Excellent.
And thanks a lot for inviting me, guys. I hate to leave and miss the end of the mission here, but I think you've got it all in good hands with Daz there.
No, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to come over and answer some questions. This is the first time we've done anything of this scale, so we were kind of learning as we go, but I feel like we had a great time, and I really do appreciate you spending the time with us and taking time out of your schedule so that all the people that love games and space and science and maybe people that just stumbled by today were able to see kind of what's going on here and talk with an astronaut. So thank you again, Dr. Jones, so much for spending the time with us.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Hope I have another chance to do it with you all, and thanks. Have a great evening and great simulation.
I've got an ISS that could need a lab installed on it at some point, and we could bring a shuttle up. So careful what you wish for.
Hey, sign me up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones.
Good night.
And everybody in chat is saying thanks, Dr. Jones, as well. Guys, that was amazing. Thank you guys for all the awesome questions and everything that was going on. I bet you... Is Nessaman's video going to pop? Let's see here. I may have to fix the video popping here.
In the meantime, if you want to send a thank you to him, be sure to tweet him at TomJones_Astro.
Oh, absolutely.
Be sure to drop him a thank you there.
Yeah, I will. In fact, I should do that. I should put out a tweet, and we can all retweet it. Or everybody just send tweets to at TomJones_Astro. Guys, the problem with the craft was a time warp bug. I was in the nefarious 2x time warp, which is a problem. Right, so I couldn't control the craft because of the 2x time warp. But definitely, guys, try Dr. Jones' book. It was let's see here. What were we looking for? Oh, I lost Sawyer. Let me unlose Sawyer.
You can get it on Amazon, Skywalking, because some bookstores have it, some don't. Definitely get Skywalking and Hellhawks are two amazing books.
There we go. Look at this. Hey, look, you're in the bottom section now. That's amazing.
Hey.
So let me just bring your video over this way, and then we'll do our little cropper thingy. But there's links in chat over here, guys, if you want to check out some of Dr. Jones' books. I'm reading Hellhawks right now. I couldn't get a copy of Skywalking on short notice, but I'm reading Hellhawks. It was on, what was it? It was on like Google Play Books or something like that. And I nailed a copy of it. I'm like halfway done. I was traveling this weekend, and it's just great stories about World War II aviators. There's the D-Day sort of invasion thing. There's a lot of anecdotal sort of things. If that's your bag, you should definitely check out Hellhawks for sure.
If you want a good space shuttle book, if you want to hear about what it's like inside the shuttle, if you want to hear personal experiences from inside the cabin, what space sickness is like, what all of his missions were like, he talks about all 4 of them. He talks about getting stuck inside the airlock and what it was like, and being on the pad with the abort. He explains it even better in the book than he did in person, and it is absolutely an amazing read. If you can snag a copy of it, it's a must.
That was me saying absolutely while drinking some Dr. Pepper. So guys, here's the deal. We are ready to actually simulate the